My son said, "The greatest gift for my wedding is if you just died," so I canceled his mortgage. The waitress refilled my coffee. The conversation moved to wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. Someone mentioned the beautiful house they decorated together, my house, technically, since my name was on every legal document that mattered. Have you ever felt erased by someone you sacrificed everything for? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. If you've ever wondered how far someone would go to reclaim their dignity when family turns against them, this story will shake you to your core. What happens when the child you sacrificed everything for looks you in the eye and wishes you were dead? What happens when they think you're powerless, but you're not? Have you ever felt completely erased by someone you gave your life to? Has someone in your family ever made you question your worth with just a few cruel words? Do you know someone who's been thrown away like yesterday's trash by their own children? Here's the brutal truth: ungrateful adult children think they can erase their parents once they get what they want. They think mom or dad will just disappear quietly into the background. Follow along as we witness a mother's calculated response to the cruelest betrayal, and discover why you should never underestimate the quiet power of someone who holds your mortgage papers. The fork stopped halfway to my mouth when he said it. "The greatest gift you could give me for my wedding is if you just died." Then someone laughed. I didn't drop the silverware. I didn't gasp. I just sat there in that Nashville restaurant, surrounded by his future in-laws, watching their faces light up with amusement. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father walked out, had just delivered my death sentence disguised as wedding humor. The woman across from me, his fiancée's mother, covered her mouth as she giggled. "Oh honey, kids these days say the craziest things." Her husband nodded, cutting into his steak like nothing earth-shattering had just happened. But I felt every word sliced through 28 years of sacrifice. 28 years of working 2 jobs in Indiana. 28 years of skipped meals so he could have seconds. 28 years of driving him to baseball practice, helping with homework, and believing his promises that he'd take care of me when I got older. What's the cruelest thing your child has ever said to you? Because I guarantee it doesn't come close to this. My hand stayed steady as I reached for my water glass, but my mind was racing. The mortgage papers in my purse suddenly felt heavier. The co-signer documents I'd signed 2 years ago when he couldn't afford his dream house in Franklin, Tennessee. The ones he always dismissed as just paperwork mom had to sign. Have you ever felt erased by someone you sacrificed everything for? That moment when you realize they see you as an obstacle instead of the person who made their life possible? His fiancée squeezed his arm, laughing. "You're terrible, baby." But she wasn't looking at me when she said it. None of them were looking at me anymore. I'd become invisible the moment the joke landed. The waitress refilled my coffee. The conversation moved to wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. Someone mentioned the beautiful house they decorated together, my house, technically, since my name was on every legal document that mattered. If your own child turned on you like this, you'd want to know your options. Subscribe so you never face this powerless. But here's what nobody at that table knew: I wasn't the helpless woman they thought I was. Every signature I'd put on his mortgage, every document I'd co-signed, every financial commitment I'd made, those weren't just acts of love. They were insurance policies. And he'd just activated mine. As laughter filled the room, I touched the mortgage papers in my purse. He had no idea what he'd just awakened. Comment "dead" to me if you've heard similar words from family. Back in my tiny rental kitchen, I opened my laptop. The mortgage account showed his name first, but mine was underneath, locked in legal steel. The wedding celebration was probably still going strong across town, but I was done pretending to be part of his happy ending. My small Airbnb felt like a war room as I pulled up document after document on the glowing screen. Bank of America. Primary borrower, my son. Cosigner, me. But that little word, cosigner, carried more weight than he'd ever bothered to understand. I clicked through the account details, my coffee growing cold as the numbers told their story. Monthly payments, $2,847. Late payment protection, my responsibility. Property taxes, my liability. Insurance claims, required my approval. Default triggers, activated by either party. Either party. I'd been so focused on being the supportive mother that I'd forgotten I wasn't just a signature on his paperwork. I was a legal partner in his biggest investment. The house he bragged about to his friends? The one he was planning to fill with his new wife's designer furniture? Half of it belonged to me. My phone buzzed with text messages from the wedding party. Photos of the cake cutting, the first dance, his arm around his bride as they posed in front of their dream home backdrop. Each image felt like salt in a fresh wound. But then I saw something else in those photos. The confidence in his smile. The way he held himself like a man who'd finally cut all his ties to the past. Like someone who thought he'd gotten everything he wanted without owing anybody anything. Ever discovered you had more power than you realized? I opened a new browser tab and searched "cosigner rights Tennessee." The legal websites painted a clear picture. I could demand full disclosure of all payments. I could require my approval for any major changes to the property. I could trigger a review of the loan terms if I felt the primary borrower was compromising my financial interests. And if I felt threatened or disrespected by the primary borrower's behavior, I could request immediate protective measures. The documents spread across my small kitchen table told a story he'd never taken time to read. Insurance policies with my name as beneficiary. Property tax records showing my liability. Equity reports proving my investment. Cosigner rights, equity ownership, foreclosure triggers. I wasn't just mom anymore, I was a mortgage holder with teeth. Ever discovered you had more power than you realized? I found the folder marked "House Docs" tucked behind old birthday cards he never opened. Every page proved he needed me more than he knew. The next morning, I drove to my house. Yes, my house, where I'd stored boxes of important papers in the basement. The same basement he'd claimed as his man cave without asking permission. The same basement where he'd hosted poker nights and never once thanked me for the space. Box after box revealed the truth he'd chosen to ignore. The original mortgage application where my credit score had saved his loan approval. The down payment records showing my $30,000 contribution. Money I'd saved for years working double shifts at the hospital. The insurance policies protecting both our interests. But it was the handwritten notes that hit hardest. My diary entries from 2021, when he first asked for help buying the house, he promised this would be temporary. Said once he got promoted, he'd refinance and take my name off everything. He said I'd never have to worry about anything. His text messages from the same period, saved in screenshots: "Mom, you're literally saving my life right now. I'll never forget this. I love you so much." The contrast between his past promises and last night's wedding toast made my chest tight with anger. One overlooked document can change everything. Subscribe to catch the details that matter. I spread the papers across my kitchen counter like evidence in a courtroom. Each signature told a story of trust betrayed. Each dollar amount represented sacrifice he'd forgotten. Each legal clause revealed power he'd assumed I didn't understand. The property deed, joint ownership with right of survivorship. The mortgage insurance, automatic payments from my account as backup. The home equity line of credit, required both signatures for activation. The refinancing applications from last year, all rejected without my co-signature. He'd tried to remove me from the loan 3 different times. 3 separate attempts to erase my legal connection to his precious investment. Each rejection letter from the bank made it clear, his income alone wasn't enough. His credit alone wasn't strong enough. He needed me, whether he admitted it or not. But the most revealing document was a letter I'd never seen before, correspondence between him and a loan officer from 6 months ago. The officer had explained that removing a cosigner required either full loan payoff or the cosigner's voluntary release of interest. In the margin, someone had written in his handwriting, "Mom would never agree to this. Need another option." So he'd known exactly what he was doing when he wished me dead in front of his new family. He'd already been planning my financial elimination. My literal death was just a more convenient solution. Property taxes, insurance claims, equity line, my name controlled it all. Time to make a call. What would you do with proof of your financial power? My cousin Jake read the documents without speaking. His law degree meant he saw what I was just beginning to understand. I called him at 7 in the morning, 2 days after the wedding. Jake had been practicing real estate law in Nashville for 15 years, and more importantly, he'd watched my son grow up. He knew the whole story, the sacrifice, the support, the gradual shift from gratitude to entitlement. Bring everything to my office, he said after I explained what happened at the wedding dinner. Don't talk to him. Don't respond to any calls. Just bring me every piece of paper you signed. His downtown office felt like a sanctuary as I laid out the evidence across his conference table. Jake's expression grew more serious with each document he reviewed. This is ironclad, he finally said, tapping the mortgage agreement with his pen. Your position is stronger than most co-signers because you contributed to the down payment. That makes you more than a guarantor. You're essentially a co-owner. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and started making notes. Tennessee law is very clear about co-signer rights, especially when there's been contributed equity. You have 3 immediate options. The first option, demand a formal accounting of all payments and property improvements. Force him to justify every dollar he'd spent and every decision he'd made about what was legally half my investment. The second option, request a partition evaluation. Basically, force the sale of the property and split the proceeds according to our contributed interests. The third option, exercise protective rights as a co-signer who felt financially threatened by the primary borrower's behavior. That last one is nuclear, Jake warned. It freezes everything until the threat is resolved. No payments, no modifications, no refinancing. Nothing moves without your approval. Ever had family in your corner when it mattered most? I thought about my son's confident smile and those wedding photos. His casual cruelty disguised as humor. His assumption that I'd just disappear quietly from his life now that he had a new family to impress. He thinks I'm weak, I told Jake. He thinks I'll just take it and fade away. Jake looked at me over his reading glasses. Your son made a critical error. He confused your kindness for powerlessness. But power doesn't always announce itself with noise and drama. Sometimes the most devastating power is the kind that waits quietly in legal documents. Jake's pen moved across yellow paper, mortgage freeze, equity hold, foreclosure trigger. 3 weapons in waiting. Ever had family in your corner when it mattered most? The phone call lasted 90 seconds. I need to exercise my co-signer protection rights immediately. The bank representative paused. Ma'am, that will freeze all activity. It was 8:15 a.m. on his wedding day. While he was probably choosing his tie or fixing his hair for photos, I was sitting in Jake's office with a cup of coffee and a legal strategy that would change everything. This is Jennifer calling about account ending in 4-4-7-2, I said to the Bank of America representative. My voice was steady, professional. I'm the co-signer on this mortgage, and I need to file a formal protection request. The woman on the phone sounded confused at first. Protection request? Can you explain what's happening? The primary borrower has made statements that suggest he views my co-signer status as temporary and unwanted. He's expressed wishes for my removal from his life in ways that make me concerned about my financial security. Jake nodded approvingly from across his desk. We'd practiced this conversation. No emotions. No family drama. Just legal facts delivered in banking language. I need an immediate hold placed on all account activity until we can schedule a formal review of the co-signer arrangement. The representative put me on hold. Elevator music played while I watched the clock tick toward what should have been the happiest morning of my son's life. When she returned, her tone was different. More formal. Mrs. Henderson, I've consulted with our legal department. Given your co-signer status and contributed equity, you do have the right to request protective measures if you feel your financial interests are threatened. That's exactly what I'm requesting. This will freeze the account effective immediately. No payments can be processed, no modifications can be made, and no refinancing applications will be accepted until the protection review is complete. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. How long does the review process take? Typically 30 to 60 days, depending on the complexity of the situation and the availability of all parties for mediation. Miss one crucial call, lose all your leverage. Subscribe so you know when to strike. 60 days. His honeymoon in Cancun was supposed to last 2 weeks. He'd be back to a financial mess that would take months to resolve. I understand. Please send all documentation to my attorney. I gave her Jake's information. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Yes. I need written confirmation that this hold is now active, and I need it sent to both my address and my attorney's office within 24 hours. After I hung up, Jake looked at me with something between admiration and concern. You know there's no going back from this, right? This isn't just freezing his mortgage, this is declaring war. I thought about his cruel words at that restaurant. The laughter from his new family. The way he'd looked right through me like I was already dead. He declared war first, I said. I'm just responding with better weapons. My phone was already buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails. The bank's automated system had probably already sent him an alert about the account freeze. Account frozen. All transactions suspended. His wedding day was about to get complicated. Comment frozen if you've ever pulled the plug on someone's plans. His panicked text came at 7 a.m. Mom, the bank says there's a hold on my account. Fix this now. I read it twice, then deleted it. The messages kept coming like a flood. Each one more desperate than the last. Call me right now. This isn't funny. I'm getting married in 4 hours. Whatever you think you're doing, stop it. Mom, please. My credit will be ruined. I was sitting in my hotel room, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over Nashville. My phone kept buzzing, but I didn't pick up. There was something peaceful about watching his panic from a distance while I stayed perfectly calm. The wedding was scheduled for noon at a fancy venue in Franklin. The same town where his house was located. The same house that was currently frozen in legal limbo thanks to one 90-second phone call. At 8:30, his fiancée started texting too. Mrs. Henderson, please call us. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. Mistake. That's what they thought this was. A misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a quick phone call from Mom. At 9:15, the call started. 5 missed calls in 10 minutes. I could picture him in his tuxedo, sweating through his shirt as he realized I wasn't going to rescue him this time. The voicemail he left at 9:43 was different from the texts. His voice cracked as he spoke. Mom. I don't know what's happening, but the bank says you put some kind of hold on everything. They're saying I can't make any payments or changes until there's a legal review. This is my wedding day. Please, whatever I did wrong, we can talk about it after the honeymoon. Just please fix this. What I did wrong. Even in crisis, he couldn't admit what he'd actually done. Would you have answered his desperate calls? At 10:30, Jake called me. His lawyer just contacted our office. They want an emergency meeting. Today? It's his wedding day. That's exactly why they want it today. They're hoping the timing will pressure you into backing down. I thought about that for a long moment. The old me would have felt guilty. The old me would have been worried about ruining his special day. But the old me died the moment he wished I would. Tell them we're not available today. Or tomorrow. Our first opening is next Tuesday. You sure about this? Through my hotel window, I could see wedding decorations being loaded into trucks. Flowers and white fabric and all the expensive details of his perfect day. The day he'd planned without thinking about the woman who made it possible. 3 more texts. 2 missed calls. 1 voicemail I'll never return. The wedding could wait, lessons couldn't. Would you have answered his desperate calls? I attended his wedding with mortgage documents in my purse and a smile that knew secrets he couldn't imagine. Walking into that venue felt like entering enemy territory. The decorated archway, the elegant centerpieces, the string quartet playing soft music, all of it paid for with confidence he no longer had any right to feel. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A navy blue dress that looked expensive but wasn't. Pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother. A small clutch purse that held copies of every legal document that mattered. I looked like the proud mother of the groom. Inside, I felt like a detective gathering evidence. His bride looked beautiful in her white gown, but I could see the stress lines around her eyes. Word had gotten out about the bank issue. Several wedding guests had asked me about it during the pre-ceremony photos, their faces full of concerned curiosity. "Oh, just some paperwork confusion," I'd said with a calm smile. These things happen with big purchases. But it wasn't confusion, and we all knew it. My son stood at the altar looking handsome and hollow. Every few minutes, his hand would drift to his jacket pocket where his phone was hidden. Waiting for updates that weren't coming. Hoping for solutions that didn't exist. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the marriage, the silence felt loaded. I didn't speak, but I felt the weight of everything I could have said. They ignored the signs and paid. Subscribed to recognize them fast. During the vows, I watched him promise to love and protect his new wife, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. The irony was almost funny. He was starting his marriage significantly poorer than he'd been when he woke up that morning. The reception was held in the same venue, with round tables covered in expensive linens and centerpieces that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. I was seated at the family table, right between his new mother-in-law and his college roommate. "You must be so proud," the mother-in-law said, raising her champagne glass toward me. "I am," I replied, touching my purse where the legal documents waited. "He's learned so much about responsibility lately." The speeches started around 7 p.m. His best man talked about their college days. His bride's father welcomed him to their family with jokes about taking care of his little girl. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, holding a glass of water instead of champagne. The room got quiet as all eyes turned to me. "When my son was little," I began, "he used to make promises he couldn't keep. He'd promise to clean his room, promise to do his homework, promise to be good. And when he broke those promises, there were consequences." The room was perfectly silent now. Today, he's making the biggest promise of his life. And I believe he means every word. The question is, has he learned what promises really cost? As they kissed, his phone buzzed. The bank's second notice. His honeymoon was about to get expensive. Ever smiled through someone's moment while holding their fate? The vacation photos stopped posting on day 3. That's when the lawyers found him in Cancun. Social media told the whole story if you knew how to read it. Day 1, champagne glasses and beach sunsets with hashtags like #newlyweds and #paradisefound. Day 2, poolside selfies and fancy dinner plates with captions about living our best life. Then nothing. I was back home in Indiana, going through my normal routine like nothing had happened. Work at the hospital, evening walks, phone calls with old friends. But every few hours, I'd check Instagram to see if the honeymoon updates had resumed. They hadn't. Jake called me on Thursday with an update. His lawyer reached out again. They're calling it a family emergency. Emergency? Apparently your son tried to make his mortgage payment from Mexico and discovered the freeze extends to all automatic payments. His credit card company flagged the account for suspicious activity when multiple large charges got declined. I pictured him in some fancy resort, trying to explain to his new wife why their honeymoon suite suddenly couldn't be paid for. The embarrassment of having his card declined at romantic dinners. The stress of calling banks from a foreign country while she watched their dream vacation fall apart. What else? They're offering mediation. Full family counseling with a financial mediator present. They want to resolve this before it affects his credit score permanently. The old me would have felt sorry for him. The old me would have worried about his stress and his new marriage and his financial future. But the old me never had to hear her own son wish she was dead. What did you tell them? That we'd consider mediation after the standard review period. 30 days minimum. Has karma ever worked this efficiently in your life? By day 5, I started getting calls from mutual friends. People who'd heard whispers about financial problems and family issues. Each conversation was careful, polite, full of offers to help if there was anything they could do. Oh, it's just some legal paperwork, I'd tell them. Nothing that can't wait until he gets back. But we both knew it was more than paperwork. It was 28 years of taken for granted love finally demanding an accounting. Emergency flight home. Credit cards maxed. The house he bragged about owning was slipping away. Has karma ever worked this efficiently in your life? He showed up at my door 3 days after his honeymoon, not with apologies, but with demands wrapped in fake tears. I was watering my plants on the front porch when his car pulled into my driveway. He looked terrible. Sunburned from Mexico but pale underneath, like someone who hadn't been sleeping. His expensive honeymoon clothes were wrinkled, and his eyes had the wild look of a person who'd spent 2 weeks trying to solve an impossible problem. We need to talk, he said, not bothering with hello or how are you. I set down my watering can and looked at him. Really looked at him. This was the boy I'd raised alone, worked double shifts for, sacrificed everything to help succeed. Now he stood on my porch like an enemy demanding surrender. Come in, I said. My living room felt different with him in it. Smaller somehow. He sat on the edge of my couch, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled out a folder of papers. This has gone too far, Mom. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? Not what you've done to us. What you've done to me. I know exactly what I've done, I replied, settling into my armchair. The question is, do you know what you did to me? He waved that away like it was nothing. That was just. I was stressed about the wedding. I said things I didn't mean. You wished I was dead. In front of your new family. You got them to laugh about it. It was a joke. Was it? Or was it the truth you've been too polite to say out loud until now? If you delay, someone else takes your spot. Subscribe to stay ahead of family drama. He opened his folder and spread papers across my coffee table. Bank statements, credit reports, legal documents from 3 different lawyers. Look at this mess, he said. My credit score dropped 40 points. The bank won't process any payments. My wife's family thinks I'm financially irresponsible. Our whole future is on hold because you decided to throw a tantrum. A tantrum. That's what he called it. I didn't throw anything, I said quietly. I exercised my legal rights as a co-signer who felt threatened by the primary borrower's hostile behavior. Hostile? I'm your son. Are you? Because sons don't wish their mothers were dead. Sons don't try to erase their mothers from legal documents. Sons don't treat 28 years of sacrifice like it was nothing. For the first time since he'd arrived, he was quiet. I got up and walked to my own filing cabinet. Pulled out my own folder of papers. Set it on the table next to his. Your turn to look at something, I said. The mortgage application with my credit score saving his loan. The down payment records showing my $30,000 contribution. The insurance policies protecting my investment. The refinancing rejection letters proving he needed me whether he admitted it or not. You can't do this to me, he said, his voice breaking. I opened the folder. I already have. What's the strongest thing you've ever said to family? His wife called me. Not to beg, to negotiate. She understood numbers better than emotions. The phone rang at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after my son's desperate visit. I almost didn't answer when I saw her name on the caller ID, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Henderson? This is Rebecca. I think we should talk. Her voice was calm, professional. Nothing like the panicked texts from the wedding day or the stressed woman I'd seen trying to hold it together during their honeymoon crisis. "I'm listening," I said. "Can we meet somewhere neutral? Maybe that coffee shop on Main Street? I have some questions about the mortgage situation, and I think you're the only person who can give me straight answers." 2 hours later, we sat across from each other at a small table near the window. She'd brought a notebook and a calculator. I'd brought copies of every relevant document. "He never told me you were a co-owner," she said without preamble. "When we got engaged, he showed me the house papers, but he said you were just a co-signer. Like a reference or something." I slid the property deed across the table. "Joint ownership with right of survivorship. My name is on everything that matters." She studied the document, making notes. "And the down payment?" $30,000 from my savings. Plus I've been covering the insurance payments for 2 years. Her pen stopped moving. "He told me his inheritance from his grandfather covered the down payment. His grandfather left him a watch and some old tools. Everything else came from me." "Have you ever gained an ally from an unexpected source?" For the next hour, she asked questions like a lawyer preparing for trial. How much had I contributed total? What were my rights as a co-signer? What would it take to resolve the freeze? "I need to understand something," she said finally. "At the wedding dinner, when he made that comment about you dying, I thought it was just nervous humor. Bad timing, poor choice of words. But it wasn't, was it?" I shook my head. It was the truth he'd been thinking for months. Maybe years. "He's been trying to remove you from the loan since last year," she said quietly. I found the rejection letters in his desk drawer. I didn't understand what they meant until now. She closed her notebook and looked at me directly. "I want you to know that I never asked him to cut you out of anything. I didn't even know you were being cut out. If I had known." "Would you have stopped him?" "I would have insisted we find another way to buy a house. One that didn't require erasing the woman who raised him. He never told me you owned half the house." Her voice carried something he'd lost, respect. "Have you ever gained an ally from an unexpected source?" The letter from his lawyer was polished and desperate. My response was shorter, and sharper. It arrived by certified mail on a Tuesday morning, thick cream paper with a law firm's letterhead that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I signed for it at my front door, recognizing the return address from Jake's warnings about incoming legal pressure. The language was everything you'd expect from a lawyer trying to sound intimidating while begging for mercy. 3 pages of legal terms that boiled down to one simple message: please let my client off the hook for his cruelty because it's expensive to be held accountable. Our client acknowledges that certain statements made during the pre-wedding celebration may have been inappropriate and hurtful. However, these statements were made under extreme stress and do not reflect his true feelings toward his mother. Inappropriate and hurtful. Like he'd forgotten to say please and thank you. We propose a mutually beneficial resolution that would allow both parties to move forward without further financial or emotional distress. Their offer was outlined in neat bullet points: would release my co-signer claims in exchange for a lump sum payment of $15,000. He would refinance the house under his name only. We would both sign a non-disclosure agreement about the family dispute. $15,000. For 28 years of sacrifice and a $30,000 down payment that made his dream house possible. I read the letter twice, then called Jake. "They're scared," he said after I read him the key points. "This kind of lowball offer means they know they can't win in court, but they're hoping you'll take quick cash to make the problem disappear." What would you do? I'd remind them that this isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. And respect can't be bought with discount settlements. I spent an hour crafting my response. Not 3 pages of legal language, but 3 sentences that said everything that mattered. Settlement offer rejected. I am exercising my right to claim full equity in the property based on my contributed down payment and ongoing financial liability. Please prepare foreclosure paperwork accordingly. Ever been told to back down, and didn't? Subscribe to stay ahead when families turn legal. I hand-delivered it to their office that afternoon. The receptionist tried to make small talk about the weather while I waited for someone to sign the receipt, but I wasn't interested in politeness anymore. "Please make sure Mr. Williams gets this today," I said, sliding the envelope across her desk. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No. Everything I need to say is in that envelope." Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete clarity. The guilt was gone. The doubt was gone. The voice in my head that whispered maybe you're being too harsh had finally gone quiet. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, my daughter-in-law. "I saw a law firm envelope in our mail. Whatever it says, I want you to know I support whatever you decide to do." 3 hours later, Jake called with an update. "They want an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning. They're calling it a final negotiation opportunity. Tell them I'm busy tomorrow. And the day after that. Settlement rejected. Full equity claim activated." 3 sentences that ended his ownership dreams. Ever been told to back down, and didn't? The foreclosure notice appeared in the local paper. His friends started asking questions he couldn't answer. I didn't expect to see it myself. I was having coffee at the diner downtown when Martha, who'd worked at the courthouse for 30 years, slid the legal notices section across my table. "Jennifer, honey, isn't this your boy's address?" There it was, in small black print between a notice about unpaid taxes and a sheriff's sale advertisement: "Notice of foreclosure proceedings," followed by his Franklin address and case number. Public record. Available to anyone who cared to look. "Legal complications," I told Martha, folding the paper. "Nothing that can't be worked out." But word travels fast in small communities, especially when it involves someone who'd been bragging about his success. By that afternoon, I'd gotten 3 phone calls from people who'd heard something and wanted to make sure I was okay. His social media told a different story than the one he'd been posting since the wedding. Instead of happy couple photos and house renovation updates, there was nothing. Radio silence from someone who used to post daily. Rebecca called me that evening, her voice tight with stress. "The neighbors are asking questions," she said. "Mrs. Patterson next door saw some official-looking papers being delivered and wanted to know if we were selling." I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. There are legal matters being resolved. But what am I supposed to say when people ask why? How do I explain that my husband wished his mother was dead and now she's taking the house? The pain in her voice almost made me reconsider everything. Almost. You tell them that family relationships require respect from both sides, and when that respect is gone, legal contracts become the only language that matters. Over the next week, the questions multiplied. His college friends started commenting on old photos, asking why he'd been so quiet lately. His co-workers noticed he'd stopped mentioning the house renovations he'd been excited about for months. One rule changes everything. Subscribe, I'll flag the next one first. The worst part, according to Rebecca's updates, was watching him try to maintain normal conversations while everything crumbled underneath. Smiling at work while knowing his credit was being destroyed. Making small talk with neighbors while knowing they'd soon learn the truth from public records. "He keeps saying you'll come to your senses," Rebecca told me during one of our coffee shop meetings. "He thinks this is temporary. Some kind of phase you're going through. What do you think?" She stirred her coffee slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I think he never bothered to learn who you really are. He saw what he wanted to see, the helpful mother, the reliable backup plan. He never considered that you might be someone who demands respect. The house he showed off at parties was about to have new owners, me. Should private family business stay private when respect dies? He didn't call to apologize. He called to surrender. What do you want?" 3 words that changed everything. The call came at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. I was making coffee, enjoying the quiet morning routine that had become precious to me since this whole thing started. His name on my phone screen made my stomach clench, but I answered. "Mom." His voice sounded broken. Hollow. I'm listening. The lawyer says I can't win. The bank won't negotiate. Rebecca's family thinks I'm. He trailed off, unable to finish. Thinks you're what? Irresponsible. Cruel. They're saying maybe she married the wrong person. I poured my coffee, waiting. This conversation had been building for weeks, and I wasn't going to rush it. What do you want? He finally asked. Just tell me what you want, and let's end this. The question I'd been waiting months to hear. But now that it was here, I felt empty instead of victorious. I want you to understand what you did to me. I know what I did was wrong. Do you? Because everything you've said since then suggests you think this is about hurt feelings. You think I'm punishing you for being rude at dinner. Silence on the other end. This isn't about the words you said. It's about what those words revealed. You don't see me as your mother anymore. You see me as an obstacle to the life you want to live without me in it. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you called me just to talk? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? When's the last time you treated me like someone you actually wanted in your life? More silence. You've been trying to erase me for years. The legal documents, the refinancing attempts, the way you introduced me to Rebecca's family. Like I was some distant relative instead of the woman who raised you. That comment at dinner wasn't a joke. It was the truth you finally felt safe enough to say out loud. His breathing was shaky on the other end of the line. I had won everything and lost the only thing that mattered, my son, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Mom, please. I can't lose the house. I can't lose Rebecca. I can't lose everything. You already lost the most important thing. You lost me. The house is just paperwork. I had won everything and lost the only thing that mattered, my son. Is winning worth losing family forever? Sitting in his empty house, surrounded by my legal victory, I realized power without love is just expensive loneliness. The keys felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked the front door. The house was mine now, legally and completely. After 3 months of legal battles, foreclosure proceedings, and family warfare, I owned every square foot of the place he'd once called his dream home. But walking through those empty rooms, I felt no satisfaction. No sense of justice served. Just the hollow echo of my footsteps on hardwood floors that had witnessed the collapse of everything I'd actually cared about. The living room still had the indent marks in the carpet where his couch used to sit. The kitchen walls showed faded squares where his wedding photos had hung. Rebecca had been efficient about moving out. They'd taken everything that mattered to them and left me with a house full of shadows and regret. I sat on the floor in what used to be his bedroom and opened the folder of legal documents that had become my weapon of choice. Mortgage papers, foreclosure notices, equity claims, property transfers. Every page represented a battle won and a relationship lost. My phone showed 17 missed calls from him over the past week. Texts that ranged from angry to desperate to heartbroken. Rebecca had stopped calling altogether after their last attempt at negotiation failed. The irony was crushing. I'd spent 28 years working to give him everything he needed to succeed. Now I'd succeeded in taking it all back, and success felt like poison in my chest. Was this what justice looked like? An empty house and a son who would probably never speak to me again? I thought about the woman I'd been before that dinner in Nashville. Someone who measured her worth by how much she could give, how much she could sacrifice, how invisible she could make herself for the sake of someone else's happiness. That woman would have been horrified by what I'd become. But I also thought about the woman I'd been in that restaurant, listening to strangers laugh at the idea of my death. Someone so erased from her own son's life that wishing her gone seemed like reasonable dinner conversation. Neither version of me felt right anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. House transfer is complete. Everything's in your name now. Congratulations. Congratulations. For what? For proving that love without boundaries becomes doormat behavior? For discovering that legal power couldn't repair broken respect? For learning that winning a battle could mean losing a war? I stood up and walked through each room one more time. The master bedroom where he'd made plans that didn't include me. The kitchen where he'd probably complained about my interference. The living room where he'd entertained friends with stories about his success, never mentioning the woman whose money made it possible. But I also saw the bedroom where I'd helped him move his furniture. The kitchen where we'd shared coffee during his first month as a homeowner. The living room where he'd shown me paint samples and asked my opinion about decorating. Both versions of this house were true. Both versions of my son existed somewhere in the wreckage. I picked up my phone and typed 5 words, "Let's talk about our future." What would you choose, victory or family? We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We sat across from each other and built something new from the ashes of what we'd destroyed. The coffee shop was neutral territory. Same place where I'd met with Rebecca months earlier, but this time it was just my son and me, sitting at a small table near the window like strangers negotiating a business deal. He looked older. Thinner. The confident young man who'd wished me dead had been replaced by someone who understood the weight of words and the cost of cruelty. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "About erasing you." I stirred my coffee, waiting. "You were right. I did want you out of my life. Not dead," he added quickly, "but gone. Somewhere I didn't have to think about owing you anything or being grateful for things I didn't ask for. Things like raising you. Things like never letting me fail. Never letting me figure out who I was without you fixing everything. I'd never thought about it that way. So helping you was hurting you? Not helping me. Controlling me. There's a difference." The words stung because they carried truth. I had controlled things. Managed his life. Made decisions for him long after he was old enough to make them himself. But wishing I was dead was your solution? He looked down at his hands. It was the worst thing I'd ever said to anyone. The moment I said it, I knew it was unforgivable. But by then, everyone was laughing, and I couldn't take it back. "Why didn't you call me the next day? Why didn't you apologize before all this legal mess started?" "Because I was embarrassed. And because part of me meant it. Not the dying part, but the gone part. I wanted to be free of feeling like a failure compared to everything you'd sacrificed." We sat in silence for several minutes. The coffee shop buzzed with normal conversations, people complaining about work, making weekend plans, living lives that hadn't been torn apart by family warfare. "So where does that leave us?" I asked. "I don't know. I can't undo what I said. You can't undo what you did. We both went nuclear. The house is still mine," I said. "Legally. I know. But I don't want it. I never wanted it. I wanted my son to respect me. And I wanted my mother to trust me to live my own life, even if I made mistakes." We looked at each other across the table, two people who'd loved each other badly and paid the price for it. "What if we started over?" he asked. "New rules. New boundaries. New respect for who we both actually are instead of who we used to be. Some battles you win by fighting. Others, you win by knowing when to put down your weapons and pick up your phone. Drop the one line from this story you'll carry with you forever.